0 points. 2 driver changes coming in for 2025, the team changing to Audi by 2026, and pit stop issues in the 2024 F1 season. We need to talk about Kick Sauber. The big thing that has happened recently after this dreadful season for them is that it has been confirmed that Kick Sauber are parting way with Zhou, which most people knew was going to happen, but more importantly, Valtteri Bottas. Now, with Valtteri Bottas, it's such a shame to see a legend of the sport go. Now, he's not a generational talent, but he was one of those drivers, like a Hulkenberg type driver, who is just incredibly consistent and will deliver exactly what you want for the team. We saw this over years and years of being the wingman at Mercedes, and we also saw him push Sauber to heights where they really shouldn't have been with where their car was. And this is a really big hit to them, because coming into 2025, you really want to have that experience from Valtteri Bottas put into whoever you partner with them. Now, it would have been Bottas and Hulkenberg, so 2 experienced drivers. It sort of makes sense why they got rid of Bottas. But let's say they went for Bottas instead of Hulkenberg. They both play the experienced driver role. So realistically, for every F1 fan out there, it's who do you prefer? Hulkenberg or Bottas? One of them had to go. But you have to take into account that Audi coming in 2026 will want Hulkenberg more than Bottas, purely because he's a German driver, and Audi will want the German name with the German driver at the front of F1. So even though that's why Hulkenberg and Bottas, potentially 2 very great drivers, and it's hard to pick from them, that's why they went off with Hulkenberg. But with 243 starts, 10 wins, 67 podiums and 20 pole positions to his name, there is a reason why he will be remembered in F1 history. Now, I can't deny a lot of this decision will come down to a few of his 2024 performances, which have been below subpar, but realistically, you can't work with the Sauber this season. And we've seen in 2022 especially, where Bottas has managed to get 49 points out of that Sauber compared to Zhou's 6 points, and then even in 2023 he got 10 points in the Sauber compared to Zhou's 6. There's never been a season where Bottas has been close to being beaten by Zhou, and especially in 2022 he really helped push that team ahead of the rest of the midfield, only losing out to Alpine and McLaren's, which was tremendous for, at the time, Alfa Romeo, Sauber, now it's Kick Sauber, but there's nothing else he could have done, and it's such a shame because he never got to show potentially what he could do and potentially get a few last points for his career. Now, I do know it has just been confirmed that he will be going into the reserve role for Mercedes, so at least he's fully not leaving the F1 circus, but not seeing him on track week in, week out is going to be really disappointing. But hey ho, this is what happens. You have to make way for other drivers in this sport. Well, that is, of course, if your dad doesn't own the team. And then when it comes to Zhou, it's really disappointing. I never expected much from Zhou coming into F1, and I still don't expect much from him now after 2 seasons of being in a Formula 1 car. He's never been able to get more than double digits in the Sauber, which, yes, is bad, but when your team gets double digits in both of the last 2 seasons, and you couldn't do that, and now you're both stuck on performances, even though technically he probably will beat Bottas in the standings this season just because of his 11th place in Bahrain, but realistically he's been at back most races. We obviously know his iconic battle between Sargent for who's going to be the worst driver on the track, and when you get beaten by your teammate by that much, you can't get out of P20 a lot, and you're not doing anything for the team bar bringing in a few sponsorships. Realistically, they're going to let you go. It's sad for Zhou because he was the first Chinese Formula 1 driver, but he simply was just not good enough. And with Sauber, you need to be good because every point counts for them. Now, talking about their old drivers that they are getting rid of, they decided, like I mentioned, to part ways with both of them, bringing in new signings of Nico Hulkenberg and Bortoleto. And this is exactly why it brings back to when I was talking about Hulkenberg versus Bottas, because it very much looks like Sauber are going for the experienced driver of Hulkenberg, trying to help out Bortoleto. And by no means, Hulkenberg and Bortoleto is a great duo. For instance, Nico Hulkenberg is a tremendous driver on the Formula 1 grid, one of the most underrated drivers, purely because if you look at his stats, it looks like he's a terrible driver. Just look at some of these. 224 starts, 0 wins, 0 podiums, and only 1 pole position. But then you realise with these stats, for someone to be around Formula 1 from 2010, a few years missed, I'll go over those, to 2024, you have to be a good driver. Formula 1 drivers, if you're not good enough, you get cut and you're forgotten. So for Nico Hulkenberg to always have a team, he's showing his talent purely just from that. Now, the other thing is, if you look at his head-to-heads from teammates, it's a lot better. He has beat his teammate 6 out of the 11 full seasons he's had in Formula 1. Now, in 2020 and 2022, he had a few races, but realistically, it was only fill-ins if another driver got ill or couldn't actually race at that particular circuit. But to have a positive head-to-head with your teammates, considering some of those teammates he beat were Kevin Magnussen and Carlos Sainz, especially Carlos Sainz, who is actually seen as a very prolific driver these days, is incredible. And if you go and look at some of the teammates he lost to, he never loses by that much. And if he does, he's always pulling his own weight. There's never a season where it looks like, Nico Hulkenberg has not been doing well enough. And that's the sort of consistency you need at a lower team like Sauber. Now, Bortoleto is a whole different kettle of fish. And that is because he will be coming in, like I mentioned, as a rookie. So he will have no experience, well, minimal experience come next season in 2025 of how to drive a Formula 1 car. He's going to need a lot of help, but he's not a bad option as well. They realistically had Colapinto or Bortoleto, and they went with Bortoleto because he hasn't won it yet, but he's leading the Formula 2 driver standings, which is always a good sign, considering, like I mentioned, we've seen Colapinto, and we've seen Ollie Behrman, and we've seen Kimi Antonelli coming in, and if he can beat all of these drivers, wow, he's definitely a very good selection from Sauber, and one to look out for. I know everyone's getting excited about Behrman, Colapinto potentially getting a seat somewhere else, and Kimi Antonelli coming in. I'm very excited about Kimi Antonelli coming in to see what he can do. But don't forget about Bortoleto. I think he could surprise a few people. Now, like I said, Colapinto does not get that seat, which means hopefully he can sort of push his way into the Red Bull family, which means I'm kind of hoping Perez gets dropped, one of Tsunoda or Lawson goes up to Red Bull, and then they bring in Colapinto. I think those would be better drivers, and he does bring in that South American, Central American money, which would be lost from losing Checo Perez. It seems like a very good swap, doesn't it? So then I've talked about the old drivers and the new drivers coming in. I really want to talk about the future of Kick Sauber / Audi as a team as a whole. And it's one of those weird places where I'm really excited to see what they can do with this new driver lineup, with new regulations coming in 2026, with the new Audi name. But it is a slow burner, and that's why I'm saying don't get excited too quickly, because in 2025 I do believe it's going to be a rebuilding season, and I don't expect them to be any better than they were this season, no better than 9th maximum. But that is just because Hulkenberg has to get a grips with the team, Bortoleto has to get a grips with Formula 1 and the team. They've got Binotto, who's just come in, who needs to get a hold of Sauber as well. There's going to be a lot of changes to that team. And with all of the development focus primarily going to the 2026 season, because of the new regulations, it makes so much sense to do that, considering the car is just terrible right now. Why even bother with the 2025 car? It makes this a little bit boring for 2025, considering there's so many other stories coming in. But for 2026, with Hulkenberg and Bortoleto still there, that's when it's going to get exciting. But honestly, after this terrible season in 2024, I can also see why people are excited for any of the fans supporting Sauber or any new fans they could bring in for Audi, because realistically, there's no worse you can get than what 2024 has been. Potentially, they could get a few points in the last race weekends. I highly doubt it, though. Their car has been dramatically off the pace. But they have fixed a lot of the pit stop issues throughout the season, so if they can just get a reliable car, potentially they could see a result like Alpine just got on the weekend for Brazil, where they get a surprise, potentially not podium because they're not up there, but a surprise points finish is all they need. But for now, they are nowhere near 9th. They're going to probably struggle to get there in 2025, but just look out for the Sauber / Audi name in 2026. So all in all, the Sauber storyline sort of contradicts itself, as it's looking exciting in 2026 and beyond, but it's not looking very exciting for 2025, bar the new drivers. But hey ho, we'll see exactly what they can do. All I know is it is F1, so anything can happen.